Ever think about all those social media platforms that just kind of vanished? Like, they promised us connections and community, and now they're just like digital dust.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But today, we're not unearthing some obscure app from, the internet's prehistoric era.
Right.
We're diving deep into a platform launched by a true titan of tech. I mean, a company that for many, let's be honest, practically is the internet.
Mhm.
Google. Remember Google Plus, eh?
Yeah. How could we forget?
I mean, over 500 million registered users at its peak. That's a huge number, any way you slice it.
Absolutely.
So our mission in this deep dive is to understand why Google, with all of its resources and its, undeniable influence, couldn't turn Google Plus into the lasting success that I think a lot of people expected it to be.
Yeah, yeah. It's a fascinating case study.
It really is. And we're going to be guided by some insights from a market researcher who's really dissected the rise and fall of Google Plus 8.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, so let's jump right in. Google Plus arrived with, sky-high ambitions.
Hmm.
It wasn't just meant to be another social media platform.
Right.
The goal was much bigger. Google wanted to create a more structured and integrated way for us to connect online.
Yeah. They had this idea of circles for organizing your relationship.
Right, circles, like your inner circle, your outer circle.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And then there was Hangouts for video communication, all seamlessly woven into Google Search, YouTube, Gmail, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, they really were aiming for this truly unified digital experience.
A very Google vision.
Exactly, like
Yeah.
everything connected, everything working together smoothly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, 500 million registered users, like we said, that sounds impressive.
On paper, sure.
But our source throws up a pretty glaring red flag right away.
Oh,
User engagement was dismal, really, really low. And we're talking about a statistic from TechCrunch that, honestly, kind of makes you scratch your head.
yeah, what is it?
90%. 90% of Google Plus sessions lasted less than 5 seconds.
Less than 5 seconds.
Less
Wow.
than 5 seconds. I mean, think about that. You barely have time to, click on something, look at it, and then you're gone.
Yeah, that's barely enough time to do anything. So what does that tell us?
Well, the key takeaway here is that just getting people to sign up, it's not enough.
Right.
You have to give them a reason to stick around.
To actually interact, right.
Exactly, to interact, to engage with the platform, with each other.
Yeah. And this is where you see this really stark contrast with, say, a
Eh,
platform like Facebook.
Oh, absolutely. Facebook was all about what the report calls organic interactions, meaning people were connecting because they genuinely wanted to. They enjoyed sharing things with their real-life friends and family.
They weren't being forced or pressured into it. It was just natural.
It felt authentic.
Mm.
Whereas Google plus Lynn, it often felt like a forced addition.
I see what you mean.
Like, were people logging in because they genuinely wanted to connect with someone or because they had to in order to, leave a comment on a YouTube video?
Yeah, yeah. It felt almost like an obligation rather than a choice.
Exactly. It wasn't a natural draw. People already had their established online communities, their routines on other platforms.
Their digital comfort zones.
Exactly. So why go through the hassle of switching to Google Plus pairing, especially if there wasn't a super compelling reason to do so?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And this leads us to think about the user experience itself.
Okay.
Google Plus did introduce some, genuinely innovative features. I'll give them that.
Yeah, I mean, there were some really interesting ideas.
Right. Like circles, for example. We touched on that earlier.
Yeah.
This idea of controlling who sees your posts, like really granular control.
Mm.
And then there was Sparks for discovering new content based on your interests.
Sparks. I'd almost forgotten about Sparks.
Yeah, it was this whole, content discovery engine built into Google Plus Use. But here's the question. Were these innovations actually helpful and intuitive for the average user?
Right. Because innovation for the sake of innovation doesn't necessarily translate to a good user experience.
Exactly. And the report suggests that in many ways, Google Plus's features, they just felt too complicated.
Yeah.
They added a layer of complexity that, say, Facebook's simpler friend model just didn't have.
It's like they tried to overthink it, maybe?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, take circles, right? On paper, it sounds great. You can, really fine-tune who sees what.
Right.
But in practice, it meant you had to manually sort all of your contacts into these different circles, like your work friends, your family, your, gaming buddies.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of work.
It was a chore, and the report says that a lot of users just found it too frustrating.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it ultimately led to them just not engaging with the platform as much. So the insight here is that sometimes simpler is better. And Google Plus's complex features might have actually overwhelmed users who were really just looking for, simple, straightforward connections.
They just wanted to share a photo with their friends,
Yeah.
not manage their entire social universe.
Exactly. And it wasn't just the features themselves. The interface, it seemed to be in this constant state of change.
Oh, yeah.
Like they were always tweaking things, redesigning elements, and often there wasn't much explanation for these changes.
Right. It felt kind of jarring sometimes.
It did. Like you log in one day and things are moved around and you're like, wait, where did that button
It
go?
makes you feel a little bit lost.
You
Yeah.
feel lost, exactly. And that's a very different approach from, say, Facebook.
Yeah.
Facebook has had its redesigns over the years, for sure,
Absolutely.
but they've tended to be more gradual, more evolutionary.
Right. More like responding to how people are actually using the platform.
Exactly. Evolving with user behavior.
Yeah.
Whereas Google Plus, it felt more like they were trying to, dictate how people should use it.
Impose their vision, kind of.
Exactly. And the market researcher makes this really crucial point. They say that Google Plus tried to reinvent social networking, but they didn't fully consider what users actually wanted in the first place.
So it's not enough to just be innovative. You have to be innovative in a way that actually serves the needs of your users.
Exactly.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you see a pattern emerging.
Hmm.
In its efforts to gain traction, Google leaned heavily on its existing ecosystem.
Yeah, they had this massive advantage,
It's
right?
huge. They had all these other products that people were already using, Search, YouTube, Gmail. And they tried to use that to drive adoption of Google Plus SAC.
Right. Like if you want to use this Google service, you need a Google Plus account.
Exactly. And the most infamous example of this was, requiring a Google Plus profile to leave comments on YouTube videos.
Yeah, back in 2013.
Do you remember the reaction to that?
Oh, I remember it vividly. The backlash was enormous. People were furious.
Yeah, it felt like a bait and switch almost.
It did. They felt like they were being strong-armed into joining the social network that they didn't necessarily want to be a part of.
Just to interact with a service they were already using and enjoying.
Exactly. And, the report actually calls it widespread backlash. And I think that's putting it mildly.
Right. It was a PR nightmare.
It was. And it really highlights this key takeaway. Forcing adoption, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it breeds resentment, not engagement.
Exactly. You can't force people to love something. They need to want to be there.
Absolutely. And in the end, this strategy backfired. Sure, it might have inflated the registered user numbers.
Temporarily.
Right. But those weren't genuine active users. They were signups driven by necessity, not interest.
Right. Empty accounts.
Exactly. And as the report points out, Google did eventually reverse these forced integrations. In 2015, they finally gave in to the public pressure.
Which was, in a way, an admission that this top-down approach, it had failed.
Yeah, they realized they couldn't force their vision on users.
So we've got low engagement, a complicated user experience, and this, almost aggressive push to get people onto the platform. That's a tough combination to overcome.
Definitely not a recipe for success.
But beyond all of that, the market researcher highlights another really critical weakness. Google Plus lacked a clear, differentiated value proposition.
Okay, so let's break that down. What does that actually mean for the average person?
Essentially, it boils down to this. What made Google Plus stand out? Why should someone choose it over Facebook, where their friends and family were already hanging out?
Right.
Or Twitter, which had become like the go-to place for real-time news and conversations, or even LinkedIn for professional networking.
Yeah, Google Plus felt a little bit like it was trying to be all things to all people.
It did. And while features like circles and hangouts, they were innovative, they're interesting concepts, they weren't compelling enough to really persuade people to uproot their entire online lives.
Right. It's like you already have your established social circles and routines on these other platforms. So what does Google Plus offer that's so much better that it's worth the effort to switch?
Exactly. And those established user communities on other platforms, they were a huge hurdle for Google Plus to overcome.
Yeah, it's hard to compete with that kind of network effect.
It really is. There just wasn't a strong enough hook to pull people away. So the takeaway here is crystal clear. In a crowded market, you have to offer a unique and compelling reason for users to choose you.
You have to give them something they can't get anywhere else.
Exactly. It's like you've built your network on Facebook, you follow the news and trends on Twitter, you connect with your professional contacts on LinkedIn. Where does Google Plus fit into that picture for the average person?
It's almost like he was trying to be a jack of all trades, but master of none.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. And then the report points to what was ultimately the final blow for Google Plus:
Mm.
security and privacy issues. And this really underscores how crucial trust is in the digital world.
Oh, absolutely.
The source details a security breach that exposed the private data of over 500,000 users.
Wow.
And what's even more concerning is that, according to the Wall Street Journal, Google initially decided not to disclose this breach.
Really?
Yeah, apparently they were worried about regulatory scrutiny and damage to their reputation.
So they tried to sweep it under the rug.
It seems that way. And what's really important to understand here is the timing. This happened just as data privacy was becoming a major global concern, with regulations like GDPR coming into play.
Right, right. People were starting to really pay attention to how their data was being used and protected.
Exactly. And this lack of transparency from Google, combined with the breach itself, it really damaged whatever trust users might have had left in Google Plus Day.
Yeah, it makes you question their commitment to protecting your information.
It does, and it really highlights this critical lesson.
Yeah.
Privacy and security, they can't be afterthoughts.
They have to be top priorities from day one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because failures in these areas, they can have devastating consequences.
They can erode trust completely.
It's almost ironic, isn't it? A company built on organizing the world's information couldn't safeguard the information entrusted to it by its own users.
A pretty stark contrast.
It is. And in the end, instead of trying to fix these security issues, really dedicating resources to overhauling their systems, Google just decided to shut down Google Plus completely.
Wow.
And that marked the end of their big social networking ambitions.
So, looking back at this whole Google Plus saga, what are the key takeaways?
Well, the market researcher gives us some really valuable insights. And these aren't just for tech companies, they're for anyone launching a product or service. The first, and I think the most fundamental, is this: you have to deeply understand user needs before you even enter the market.
Right. Don't just assume you know what people want.
Exactly. And Google Plus is a perfect example of how if you build it, they will come doesn't always hold true.
Yeah.
It didn't solve a significant user problem in the way that, say, Facebook connected friends and family or LinkedIn facilitated professional networking.
It didn't have that clear purpose.
It didn't. And the report really stresses the importance of thorough market research. You have to know what people want, what they need, what their pain points are.
You have to understand the problem you're trying to solve.
Exactly. The second lesson ties directly back to that forced integration we talked about earlier.
Right.
Seamless integration can be a powerful tool, but it has to enhance the user experience, not make it worse.
Yeah, it has to add value.
Exactly. And Google's approach of making Google Plus mandatory for other services, it was just too heavy-handed. It alienated users.
It felt like a punishment, not a perk.
It did. And successful integration, it prioritizes user convenience. It makes things easier, not harder.
It's about making the user's life better.
Exactly. Lesson number 3 is all about having a strong value proposition.
Okay, that's crucial.
It's non-negotiable, especially in a competitive market. You have to be able to articulate what makes your product or service different and better than the alternatives.
You need to be able to answer the question, why should I choose you?
Exactly. And Google Plus just didn't offer users enough compelling reasons to break their existing social media habits.
It didn't offer a strong enough incentive to switch.
Exactly. And finally, the fourth key lesson, and this one has become increasingly important in recent years: privacy and security have to be top priorities from the very beginning.
Not an afterthought.
Absolutely not. The security vulnerabilities in Google Plus, they were a major factor in its downfall.
And in a world where data breaches are becoming more and more common, companies can't afford to take security lightly.
Not at all. Users are more aware of privacy issues than ever before, and they expect companies to protect their data.
Right. It's a matter of trust.
It is. It's interesting to note that despite this very public failure, Google as a company, they didn't collapse.
Right. They're still a tech giant.
They are. The market researcher touches on Google's ability to recover, highlighting their return to core strengths, things like artificial intelligence, cloud computing, advertising.
Yeah, they refocused on what they were really good at.
They did. It's like they took the hit, they learned from it, and then they moved on.
A resilient company.
Very much so. And they didn't completely abandon social features altogether.
No.
Instead of launching another standalone social network, they've integrated social functionalities into their existing products,
Okay.
like YouTube, Google Photos.
Makes sense.
It does. It seems like they learned that a more organic, user-centric approach within their established ecosystem might be a better strategy than trying to create an entirely new social universe from scratch.
More about evolving what they already have rather than starting from zero.
Exactly. And this brings us to our fast fact highlight. And this really underscores the core challenge that Google Plus faced.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The report states that while Google Plus reached over 395 million active users at its peak, less than 6 million of those users were actually engaged with the platform.
Wow, that's a tiny percentage.
It's a huge discrepancy, and it highlights the difference between simply getting people to sign up and actually getting them to use and find value in your product.
Right, it's not just about numbers, it's about meaningful interaction.
Exactly. Ultimately, it's about genuine user retention and organic engagement.
And that's something Google Plus just couldn't achieve.
So, to recap, the failure of Google Plus Con, it seems to have been a perfect storm of factors. Low user engagement right from the start, a user experience that was perceived as overly complicated, the unpopular decision to force integration with other Google services, a lack of a clear and compelling reason for users to choose Google Plus over other platforms, and finally, those damaging security and privacy breaches.
It's a cautionary tale, really.
It is. It shows that even the most powerful companies with seemingly limitless resources can stumble when they lose sight of fundamental user needs and the dynamics of the market.
It's a reminder that you can't just force success. You have to earn it.
Exactly. And the lessons we've explored from Google Plus's journey, understanding user needs, prioritizing seamless and valuable integration, offering a strong and unique value proposition, and making privacy and security paramount, these are timeless principles. And they apply far beyond the world of social media.
They're relevant for any business, really.
Absolutely. So here's a final thought for you to ponder. Given Google's vast resources, the incredibly talented people they have working for them, and their deep understanding of the internet, what single change, looking back, do you think could have fundamentally changed the fate of Google plus a Wedge? Or maybe even more broadly, how have the lessons learned from Google plus very public misstep influenced the way social features are developed and integrated into the other platforms we all use today? It's a reminder that even in the world of technology, where things can feel very predictable, there are always fascinating what-ifs and enduring lessons to be learned.
Food for thought.
Exactly. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the rise and fall of Google plus We. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep connecting.
See you next time.